EP.4, Streets and Scholars, and we're on FG.
Hey, what's going on, Alex? How you doing today, man?
And I'm doing pretty good. And you know what? This is our fourth episode, and we really haven't introduced ourselves of who we are to the audience. You're new on the scene.
Exactly.
And we haven't done a formal introduction. I know some people know who I am, but if you were going to just introduce yourself to a whole bunch of strangers, what would you tell them about yourself?
Tell them about myself?
Yeah.
Well, I'm Frank Thornton. You know what I mean? In the streets, I'm known as FG. I'm off the east side of Linwood, Compton. Me, just a positive brother, trying to keep perspective of what's going on in the streets, been there, done that, but just try to keep a positive perspective from what's going on with it. But other than that,
Well, I think there's more about you because we're touching on a lot of issues, criminal justice matter issues that you have a lot of insight on too.
I do.
And I don't know if that's something you wear on your sleeve in terms of time in prison that you've done, whether it was state or feds. Even though that's looked at as a negative, that experience allows you to know so much more about the system.
Well, no doubt, and I have done state and fed time, so I do have a perspective. I have a perspective on the inside of what it is to be on the inside, and to come outside and try to be successful, still try to have a family and live a normal life, a wife and kids, and try to live a normal life. So, those perspectives are there. It's not nothing I, wear on my sleeves, but at the same time, it's nothing that I'm ashamed of either. So anytime that we're speaking and a subject comes up and I can give some insights on, what a person may felt at the time or what I was thinking or felt at the time in a situation legally from that side, then, I don't have no problem at all, trying to clarify or give somebody some insight on, what I'm talking about as far as, the street activity and prison activity goes on.
And then at the same time, you touched on it, you're also a full-fledged family man.
Oh, no doubt.
Which not a lot of people can say that, they've had this life in the streets, been to prison, and now you fully immersed in family life.
Exactly. But I think a lot of people are doing, more and more people I see are doing it. It's a lot of jobs out there that is more felon friendly now. You just had to have the mindset that, no matter what happened in the past, I still have to go out and provide for my family and try to, have a career or whatever it is and make sure that, I live a normal, regular life,
Yeah, no doubt. And just briefly about me, I was born in New York City. I moved to LA as a 11-year-old in the very early 1980s. For those who don't know, a lot of people confuse where am I from. I'm from LA, and at this point, I've spent a majority of my life in Los Angeles.
No doubt.
I grew up in the West Adams mid-city area of LA. And I have been and we're actually recording this podcast from that part of Los Angeles. And I've been in this community for, 30 something years, I think 35 years, something like that. And I love this area that we're in. When I walk around, every building, every corner is a memory, whether good or bad. Marvin Gaye actually used to live down the street from here back in the 80s.
Heard that,
So there's a lot of rich history in this community. I ended up graduating from Dorsey High School, and for a couple of years, I didn't know what I was going to do. And then about 4 years after high school, I decided to go to college, and I became a graduate of USC. And in the process of all of this, I've always studied the streets. The streets has always been something that I've been intrigued with since a kid. And when I got to college, they asked me, what did you want to study? And I said, I don't know. They said, well, you can study anything you want. I said, anything? They said, anything. I was like, okay, I'm gonna study the streets, and I started finding books. As you can see, I have books all over.
No doubt. I was
all
looking at
these
some
books
of them.
are about the streets in some way, shape, or form. So that's how I ended up getting involved in StreetGangs.com and being the first person to ever bring the streets to the internet. And here we are now. I don't know how many years later, 20-something years later, and I'm doing a podcast. And I just want to also reiterate, I had no plot or plan to do a podcast with you. I've been wanting to do a podcast ever since I left the Gangster Chronicles 2 years ago now. but I just haven't found a person that I can vibe with. I've been trying. Right. I thought about doing one with Bosco. I thought of doing one with Gorilla Black. These are two, to me, both sharp brothers, but just for whatever reason, it didn't happen. I don't know why. It could be my fault, But then when I met you and we started chopping it up and you told your story and I saw how sharp you was, I was like, you know what? I can do one with FG if FG is down. I wasn't sure if you was down.
Yeah, initially I wasn't. I came in to tell my story on street TV, but at the same time, to see the insight that you had and the perspective you had, and not to mention, I had people pushing me to say, man, you know what, your voice can be used, on certain platforms, So when we even halfway discussed it, for me, it was definitely, an honor to get in to be able to share what I know, share my, wisdom from the streets or a family life or prison, So, we can go up and down with it, So like I say, man, I'm cool. We decided to set this up, man, and I think we can do all right.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to give the listeners out there and some of the people who may be watching this on YouTube a little bit of background on us, because we just always jump right into the episode.
Yeah, we jump right in. Yeah, I did notice that.
And we don't really say who we are. But so we're on episode 4, and I want to just go over a few things from last week's episode. I always try to do a fact check. A fact check's important to me because we all make mistakes when we talk, but very rarely do we correct those mistakes.
Right.
So there's no way that we can speak here for an hour and not make a couple mistakes along the way. And I just like to clear some of that stuff up. So last week, I remember mentioning that George Floyd and the cop that killed him got arrested pretty fast, but I didn't provide like a actual time frame on that.
What was the time frame?
Check this out. George Floyd was killed on May 25th of 2020. The very next day, Minneapolis Police Department fired them, all 4 of those dudes.
Oh, yeah?
One day later.
Wow.
Fired all of them. And then it was on May 29th that the Hennepin County attorney announced the 3rd-degree murder charge against Derek Chauvin. So that's 4 days.
Wow.
So we often hear about police departments needing to do an investigation.
Right.
How long is their investigation?
Man, a year or two sometimes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And in 4 days, they knew they was ready to rock and roll with this guy.
Yeah, but if you or I get pulled over for some sort of offense, they're not going to say, you know what, go home, and we're going to investigate this, and we'll come back to determine if we're going to arrest you or not.
Right.
No, they're locking us up, right?
Yeah,
right on the spot.
No doubt.
And their investigation is going to happen while we're in custody.
Exactly.
So I think that we're seeing more departments do this, but there are some of these departments that are going to sit there and say, it's going to take time to investigate. And we're going to talk about one of these cases a little later in this episode that basically took 3 years. They took 3 years to charge the cop. But yeah.
That's a long time.
It is. It's definitely too long to investigate.
That's a long time.
So yeah, 4 days for Derek Chauvin to get indicted for killing George Floyd.
Man, I didn't know it was that fast.
Yeah, I wasn't. I knew it was quick, but I said, let me look this up. And then we also spoke last week about cops should be a certain age. Before they're given a gun and a badge.
No doubt. And I hear that they did raise the age for California, to meet up with some of the other requirements from other states. And they raised it from 18 to 21. I still think that's pretty young. But at the same time, an 18-year-old. Come on, man. You can't even buy liquor, but you're old enough to arrest somebody for drinking liquor, So at the same time, it's a step for me, it's a step in the right direction. But and they also talking about within the next 4 years, having these cops, make them required to take some classes.
Yeah.
And I'm all for that. Especially if the classes pertain dealing with the community, dealing with the public, dealing with the mental state of people, So I'm for that as well.
Definitely. There was the bill that actually increased the minimum age in California was written by this politician that I have never heard of named Reggie Jones Sawyer, right here from LA. In his bill, though, he wanted the age requirement to be 25, not 21, and he said that 25 is a benchmark age because of brain development.
No doubt.
Which is the same reason why people are getting out on those youth offender cases. If they were under 25,
no doubt,
they're getting a little bit of action. But the bill, I guess the finalized bill agreed at 21. Yeah.
Now, do he have any specific reason or any kind of experience that made him push this bill?
No. I don't know his background. I was unfamiliar with this politician, and
Okay.
I don't really keep up with politicians
Right,
to
right,
keep it
right,
real.
right, right.
A lot of these people aren't working for us.
No, no doubt. But sometimes when they bring a bill about, sometimes something didn't happen to make them want to push it all of a sudden. So, I was just wondering if it was a situation or anything.
Well, I looked him up. He is a brother. He's 59 years old, and he's representing South LA.
Oh, okay.
So, but I did think it was interesting that 25 was the benchmark age that he tried to get, and I'm thinking that maybe it'd be a hard. It'd be hard to fill in all these jobs
Well,
that are open,
that's
right?
the other thing. Unless they let them sit in the jailhouse for a couple years, you know what I mean? And that could take up a couple years. Bring them in at 21, let them sit in the jailhouse for a few years, you know what I mean, and bring them on out to society, and that way they can have a different perspective on, at least dealing with the, like I say, the mental aspect of some of these people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let me just read this one part where it talks about the age 25. He says when he introduced the bill, he cited research showing that the brain areas dedicated to impulse control, planning, and working memory do not fully develop until age 25. So that has to do with like whether you decide you're going to shoot somebody or kill somebody.
Yeah, that's definitely.
But I was shocked to know that there were so many cities in California where the minimum age was 18, because the minimum age is not 18 for LAPD and the LA County Sheriffs.
Well, I didn't know no departments had the age of 18, to be honest with you. I actually thought it was higher than that. If you would have asked me, I would have said 23, but 18, wow.
Yeah, well, LAPD's minimum age requirement is 20 years old at the time of application and 21 years at the time you graduate from the academy. And then the sheriff, their minimum age requirement is 20.5 years, because by the time you finish the academy, you'll be 21. But check this out, though. We send 18-year-olds to the military to go fight wars.
No doubt.
And, the Vietnam War, the average age of the Vietnam soldier was 19 years old. Teenagers fought that war.
They did, and they still fight. A lot of people don't understand that some of these people that's launching these missiles off these Navy cruiser destroyers, 19, 20, 17, well, I'm going to say 18, 19, 20 years old. But I believe that they had the fastest reflex. I believe that, their brain skills, and when they know exactly what they're doing, I do believe they get it done, just to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, it's tough, man. 18 years old and putting a rifle in a kid's hand and telling them, all right, go on the front line and fight this war.
Well, some of the wars are fought, they're not so much boots on the ground as it used to be because of all the technology, and then, like with the technology, they got so much intel. But back in the day, like you say, back in the World War II, the Vietnam and all those, nah, man, they was just dropping them off with a gun, parachute into a whole nother country, get down there and fight. So I think with today's technology, I don't look at it so bad, but at the same time, I do know why they go for the youth. They are athletically inclined to, the agility wise to, jump down, get up, roll over, shoot, do what they need to do. So I get it.
How would you feel if your youngest son said, I want to join the Army or the Marine Corps?
Well, you know what? I'll definitely sit down with them and give them a full layout on what to expect, and what their expectations are. I would say why the Army or the Navy opposed to the Air Force. The Army or Marines are opposed to the Air Force or the Navy.
Yeah.
I would have that conversation. What are you looking for? And if you just have that type of son that from 6 years old, he was just a daredevil jumping off couches, and then what kind of mentality he have, and okay, he's a Marine basically. He has that kind of mentality with this is what he want to go do, and but I definitely would have a talk with him about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want my two sons joining at all. I told my son, he got a thing in the mail from the Army, and I said, look, if you ever make this decision, all your other dreams that you want to do are going to be put on hold. You want to ride bike,
no
you
doubt.
want to do this, you want to do that. None of that happens anymore.
Right.
For at least 4 years or 8 years, depending on how many years you enlist for. So yeah, I'm trying to steer my two sons away from it, because I don't know how many thousands of soldiers already have died in Afghanistan in the last 20 years. That could be my son sent to
definitely
one of these places.
Definitely. And the thing about it is, that's why I say, what are you going for? Because of his education, they got hundreds of colleges you can attend. If it's a trade, you got hundreds of trade schools you can attend. You know, so I mean, if you just said, "Yo, Daddy, I just want to go shoot," that's a whole separate something else. But outside of that, you know what I mean. I'm the same way. You know, I wouldn't encourage them to. You know, I wouldn't be disappointed, but I wouldn't encourage them at all to do it actually.
Yeah. So the minimum age in the state of California is now 21 to be a cop, but you can still go to the army and shoot guns at the age of 18. Right. And this new law actually went into effect this year, 2022, January 2022. So this is brand new, and hopefully we'll have better judged or cops that use better judgment when confronting people in the streets that are quote armed or unarmed. You know, half the time the dude ain't even armed and the cop is acting.
Still, no, those are the ones that should be indicted.
Yeah, so we'll see if over the next year if California, if this age requirement is a positive thing. All right. Also, I don't know if you heard this interview that Snoop gave a couple days ago, but in the interview, he claimed that he owned The Chronic. He claimed he owned Dr. Dre's album, The Chronic, but then Dr. Dre's attorney put out a memo saying, no. Dre owns 100% of The Chronic. So I was just, I have no reason, I don't understand why Snoop said that. It could be, I was thinking maybe he was just really smoking some good weed during that interview.
You know what? I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
But if he did say that, yeah, he definitely misspoke because I'm sure he does.
Yeah, Dre's attorney put a press conference out. This is an interview that he did on this platform called Tidal, and he basically claimed he owned it. But you know what's interesting? We talked about Snoop's albums last week, and the two albums still belong to Death Row. He doesn't have any ownership over those albums, but this purchase will get him closer to that. But I listened to this one interview he did, and he said he owns the album cover, Doggy Style. You remember how it had this really artistic drawing?
I do.
It's a brick wall, it's a dog.
Right.
His cousin drew that back in the day. So he owns that, but he doesn't own the album. So he spoke on that, and I thought that was interesting because he could put that on a hoodie, he could put that on a hat, and I've seen that actually on a lot of different things. So it's just this bizarre arrangement where he was able to acquire the artwork of the album, but not the music at this time.
So. Yeah, legally that's crazy, but I hey man, if you can get what you can get out of it, you know, because I'm assuming that if somebody was to like resell the album or repost the album, you would have to go through a piece of him to advertise.
Absolutely, yeah. He still gets a little bit of piece of that, so you still got to license that through him. But I was looking up what's in the Death Row catalog that is actually worth something because the Chronic's not in it.
Right.
Both of Pac's albums are not in it. So this is what we have. Snoop Dogg's two albums. The first one, Doggy Style. The second one, The Dogfather. That's still part of it. And then there's these soundtracks. The Above the Rim soundtrack was a Death Row thing. And so was the Deep Covers soundtrack, which was also a Death Row thing. The Deep Cover soundtrack has that song 187 on an undercover cop. Yeah. And then Above the Rim has a whole bunch of artists on it.
A whole bunch of it.
So
what about the CD Two Gangster for Radio? You don't remember that one?
I didn't see that list on there. Who was that one by?
They came through Death Row. It was a compilation. And I believe Reggie Wright was running the show then when they came out there. I'm almost certain he was when they came out. Various artists was on there. It had some heat on there too. Okay, it was called Two Gangster for Radio. Yeah,
that might be on there, but these were the top. These are the top albums.
Right.
So that might be a little bit below these four because also on the Above the Rim soundtrack you have the song by Warren G, Regulate. That wasn't. I always thought that was a Warren G thing.
You know what? I did too. If you go back, you just brought that to me, man. My son loved that song. That's one of his songs.
That's on the Above the Rim soundtrack. So there's some pretty good hits still left on the Death Row catalog. Yeah. All right. So last week I asked if the East Riders were on Death Row, and they were absolutely not because that happened after Snoop left. Snoop left Death Row in '97, and that's when the Eastsiders took off, and their first album was on Tommy Boy Records. So there's no Death Row connection with that first album by the Eastsiders. And then last week I said that when we're talking about snitching, rats, and informants, I said that Al Sharpton is not from the hood, but he actually is from the hood. He was born and raised, I think he was born in Queens, but he grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
Which is, that's one of the main hoods in Brooklyn. I think Mike Tyson is from Brownsville. Riddick Bowe is from Brownsville. There's a whole bunch of rappers from Brownsville. So he is from the hood, but his parents never let him out.
Right.
He grew up in the church.
Right, he wasn't a street dude.
No, never was a street dude. Okay. So it doesn't really change anything about the way we analyze.
But we just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, I wanted to clear that up, that Al Sharpton actually is from the hood.
Yeah.
He's from Brownsville, but he gave his first sermon at the age of 4 years old.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so that boy's he's a church boy through and through.
Through and through.
Yeah. But he's still an informant, though, right?
No doubt.
We still gonna give him that stamp.
We gonna put it on him.
Yeah.
We gonna put it on him.
Okay, so that's all I have for our fact check. So let's get into our first topic. This was a topic that I wanted to hit last week, but we didn't have any time. But I wanted to talk about DPs, especially in the context of L.A., Los Angeles, Compton, Watts, what they mean here in L.A. County. Because it's been a trending topic the last several weeks. The first dude that I can remember that actually spoke about a DP was Snoopy Badass, who said he had to run 4 fades for saying something negative about the West Side Pyrus. And then C-Mac, Crip Mac from 5-5 Neighborhood Crip, he had to run some fades because he said something negative about a whole bunch of stuff on a Facebook post from like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the DP in and of itself? Because it's really your own homies are beating you up for a violation.
Right. It's disciplinary action based on a violation that you committed. It's different levels, different forms of DPs. And the strange thing about it is to hear it, the reason why people haven't heard it or, it's not been spoken out loud is because the DPs usually don't be mentioned. It's in-house discipline, you handle it, you get it done, you know what I mean? And it's nothing you broadcast. It's nothing that you're proud of. For one, you're not proud of it because whatever the homie did, it wasn't a proud moment. It was in violation of the code that was set forth in your neighborhood, and you guys had to handle it. And but now, since like you said, you have the internet, you have public figures speaking about it, and to me, it take to be honest with you, it take a real man to even discuss that, he had to be DP'd or, disciplinary action was took upon him for a violation, so I do respect the dudes who speak on it, but normally they not spoken upon, they just get handled,
So really, it's nothing that someone should really be embarrassed about, right? Maybe they might be embarrassed about what they actually did to get the DP, but the DP itself is not something to make fun of somebody because that's what it's supposed to be.
No doubt. You know what I mean? And like I say, I've administered a few DPs and been around a few, and then at the same time, like I say, this is your homeboy. This is a friend of yours. This is something that you're not proud to see. You know what I mean? You're more mad about the violation, but yet and still you're more mad about the DP itself. And then the way some of the DPs work, because like I said, I have administered a few, and the look on one of the homies' faces, because you never know who's going to have to step up to do the disciplinary action. When your name is called, you have to just make it happen. And I'm sure some of the homies would not want to participate. You know what I mean? But like I told one homie before, this DP might save your career, because without it, you could just, be, alienated from the whole Paru. You know what I mean? So the DP can save your career because you messed up. You know what I mean?
Now, can a DP go wrong though? Like a little bit too over the top, a little bit too excessive, too brutal in some instances.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. Yeah, the last couple that I've been around went a little too far. That resulted in both of them going to the hospital. You know what I mean? But at the same time, when you're talking about two people, basically trying to smash you for your violation, it's hard. You know what I mean? And all it takes is one wrong move or one wrong hit, you know, you can end up with a broken jaw, busted eye socket. I mean, you know, things can go wrong, you know, but at the same time, it's also meant to deter you from doing it again as well.
Now, have you ever seen a DP where the dude that was getting DP was actually holding his own against the two dudes that was, I know sometimes it can be three dudes. Let's just say in this example, there's two guys DPing one guy, but the one guy is actually holding his own against the two guys.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. I've seen it. You know what I mean? Firsthand, you know, and to the point to where a third guy had to be called in, you know, and you know, it's on the inside, it's a proud moment as well, you know, because these are the homies. These are family members. These are, you know, some of your best friends, dudes who have your back. You know, so at the same time, you know, yeah, he might need to be violated, but when he holding it down like that, you also, you know that he ain't no buster either. You know, he just messed up, you know. So I'm over here got a little smirk on my face because I'm visually picturing, you know, the last time this happened, you know, and sometimes, don't get me wrong, I have to reiterate that the right person has to administer a DP. So I'm not sitting here saying that, you know, my involvement in DPs is something to be proud of or something to brag about, because they aren't. But sometimes if the wrong person is administering, it can go very wrong. You know what I mean? And it's because like I had a DP before where another dude wanted to jump in because his brother was a part of it. You know what I mean? You know, and hold on, homie. You know what I mean? You wasn't called. You know what I mean? Yeah, your brother getting a little something, but you know, that's what it is. So, you know, you have all sort of situation, and if you're not in control of this total situation, I mean, it could easily just get out of hand, very out of hand, you know. So that's why sometimes an OG homie, you know, that'll come around and do it, the respect is there for it to go exactly as planned, you know. So that is very important when it comes to DPs.
So you basically have to have a good referee.
Exactly.
That's present.
Exactly. You know, opposed to a couple DPs, one DP we seen recently that, in my opinion, wasn't a DP. It was basically, dude, you got jumped. You know what I mean? And you took it on the chin and you manned up, but at the same time, that wasn't a DP to me. You know what I mean? Opposed to Snoopy Badass spoke on his own, so I'll speak on it, you know, and I know have firsthand knowledge of that DP, you know, because that did happen in Compton, so I had firsthand knowledge of it. That, you know, he ran fades as a former DP. It's not even always two people on you. You know what I mean? Some DPs are just really, you know, depending on how bad the violation, and Snoopy Badass violation was more verbal. You know, he said something about somebody that he might have wanted to take back, but it wasn't like he stole something or robbed one of the homies or, you know, something like that, you know, beat up somebody's little sister. It wasn't that bad. So him was able to run those fades, you know, I thought whoever came up with that plan, I thought whoever was in charge and ran that, they ran that well, you know what I mean? And like he said, you know, he took his on the chin, he fought with 4 dudes, you know, and he accepted his responsibility that, you know, but I guarantee you he'll be careful because that's what DPs do. They make you mindful to not to do that shit again. You know. Now
the way he explained his DP is that he ran 4 separate fades against one person each, and they made sure they put their best fighters in front of him and their biggest ones. So he had to run 4 one-on-one fights in a row, and I know that would be it's exhausting after one.
Oh, no doubt.
So you running 4 of them. By the 4th one, he's getting his ass whooped.
Oh,
basically.
No doubt. You know what I mean? And I've been in that situation, not a DP situation at all, but a situation where I ran a fade with 3 dudes, you know, and I said something disrespectful when I was in state prison to this one guy, but you got to think some of these other neighborhoods have the same name, you know what I mean? Like, say if you have, I'm gonna just use an example like say the neighborhood Crips, or you know, and this one neighborhood, you're not thinking that, hold on, these the such and such neighborhoods and these the such and such neighborhoods, you know what I mean? So I dissed a dude from one section, and there was other dudes from different parts of town, but they ran under that same name, you know, and I ran 3 squabs with them, and I should have fought the dude I fought last, I should have fought first, you know, because I was tired, you know. So for him to run 4, you know, I ain't gonna lie, he had to be exhausted. You know, he had to be shook up from the first 2 or 3, you know, and to be honest with you, in that situation, you know, nothing but respect that he went over there, you know, and handled that like that, to be honest with you.
And he's admitted that he ain't the best squabbler, he ain't the hardest fighter, but the fact that he pulled up, what does that mean?
To me, it mean a lot. Pulled up, because they didn't pull up to you. You know what I mean? Because you're in the, if they pull up, you're in a situation where you don't have a choice. He went over there and accepted his responsibility like a man, you know, and that's hard. Whether no matter how good you fight or don't fight, you know what I mean. And he got out there and squad, you know what I mean. So what somebody else may be looking at, you know, who you know had the most punches in, that's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking for a man get up there, he run his fade, win, lose, or draw. He stepped in there and he stood his ground as a man, you know, and I respect that more than anything. It's not even about if he technically, you know, won. You know what I mean? It's about if he had the heart to get in there squab and stay in there squab until that fade was over. And that's with any fight for me. You know what I mean? Man, you get up in there, you get down. And you come on out. We ain't gonna even talk about who won, lose, or draw. We just gonna talk about that you did go up in there and handle your business and get down, you know?
Now, what about a guy that he knows that he's about to get DP'd and he doesn't pull up? Mm-hmm. He runs from the DP. Mm-hmm. Then what?
Well, you know, you looking at now you're looking at a worse DP when we do catch up with you. You know what I mean? You know, and like I said, I used to encourage the guys that listen, man, take your disciplinary action on the chin. You know what I mean? And you messed up. Nobody's picking on you. Nobody's, you know, homie, handle your business, take it on the chin, you know. So, but yeah, you run from a DP, man. That's just gonna be extra knots upside your head. You know what I mean? When it's time because now the DP gonna pull up on you and catch you. That's when it turned into like a little. Now we jumping you damn near instead of, you know, being an organized DP. Whoever catch you, they gonna run that on you. You know, and that don't look good. That don't look honorable, you know, for something you signed up to do. You know what I mean? You signed up to be a part of this, man. You know, when you don't stick by the rules, there's disciplinary actions. All DPs, like I say, aren't getting jumped in, you know, even in prison. You know what I mean? All disciplinary actions ain't physical. Some of them, man, you really go run, hey, man, go do 100 burpees, go run 10 laps. I mean, it could be, you know, the infraction might have not been, you know, that bad. You know what I mean? But at the same time, when it's hands on, you know, don't run from your DP, man. You know.
Now, Snoopy Badass said that he did feel wrong of what he had said about that other hood, so he pulled up because he did feel like it was wrong. But what if a dude feels like, you know what, I ain't wrong. I don't deserve this DP. They're wrong. You know, they got it wrong. So this is a guy that's saying, I'm down for getting DP'd, but y'all got it wrong.
Well, hey, Snoopy Badass didn't have to go over there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I wouldn't have looked at him no different just based on, you know, I could say what I want to say about the next guy. Now, if the next guy feel that disrespected, then come holler at me. But just like you and me both, you know, we both have a mic in front of us. I could say what I want to say. And the next man feel disrespected, then you come holler at me. So he didn't have to go over there. But he felt he was in violation. He felt he was wrong. He knew he was wrong. Because you shouldn't have been talking behind a homie back who you know, mess with. You know what I mean? You know, and so he did what I felt was the man thing to do. Let me go over here because I was wrong, you know. But had he said he wasn't wrong, I mean, that situation. I mean, it would have ended up the same. Because somebody would have bumped into him later on. Hey, man, what you said about the homies? Now you're in a situation when you with your kids or you with your wife or you with, you know, somebody, you trying to do a music deal because I know he rap and stuff. He might be with a music executive somewhere trying to work out a deal. Now this situation comes upon him and that don't look good at that moment. Go over there. He handled it like a man. Hey, you know, and that's what I can say about that situation. I know a lot of people that wouldn't have did that, Alex.
Yeah. Now we're gonna start. I think we're gonna see more of these on video. We're gonna see a lot of these DPs on YouTube because it seems like the nature of everything we do is we want to record it. But I'm surprised there's not a lot of DPs from LA County that are on the internet. You know?
Well, I'm gonna tell you why. Like I said earlier, for one, they should be private. They shouldn't be aired out. You know, hood business shouldn't be all over the internet like that. You know what I mean? And not to mention, I don't know if these young dudes is taking DPs like that. I don't know if they honoring them like that. You know what I mean? Like I say, back in the day when we was coming up, everybody lived in the hood. You couldn't run. You know what I mean? Somebody gonna come knock on your door, tell you come up to the park. You're gonna, you couldn't run. Now these dudes, they bang and don't live in their hood. They can run for 6 months, and by the time it ain't even running, they gonna call it, I just ain't been to the hood. And then you finally show up, and it been 6 months. They half-ass forgot about what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then not to mention, like you say, these little bitty dudes ain't fighting no more. They want to pull out a pistol every chance they get. You know what I mean? And that's where the honor is leaving. Because if you can't accept your responsibility for making a mistake, then, there's no unity in the hood. There's no real love, true love for the hood like you say you have. Because when you messed up, you should be able to take that on the chin and accept your responsibility.
Now, you mentioned being in prison during a DP that you ran some fades. How different is a DP in prison in a confined environment when someone needs to be, I guess, disciplined for a violation?
No different. It's even easier. It's going to get done. You can't run from that. You know what I mean? But you set it up. You go in the cell. You knock it down. You know what I mean? And it get done just that easy, just that fast. And in the time we sitting here talking, it have been handled. The situation is resolved. But what I can say, is I've been in a situation where a DP needed to be handled. Say one of the a Southsider disrespect the homie, or a Paisa disrespect the homie, and you talk to the Paisas and they people. They look, your homeboy disrespected the homie. They'll straight up be like, send one of your people out here at Chowtown, and they'll handle it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna just be 100 with you. And one of your boys watch you, be like, oh, they handled that. Because, they going to keep it to a minimum. Blacks are a little different. You know what I mean? They not so quick, or we not so quick to discipline the homie when he mess up. And sometimes that's how some of these bigger issues arrive on the prison yards. Because we not willing to discipline our homie, like other races are willing to discipline theirs for us. You know what I mean?
Now, in prison, you can disrespect somebody by doing the slightest thing. Like you walked across their little area to go get a basketball that bounced far because it rebounded off the rim, and you walked through someone's area. Do you understand like let me think? How do I word this? Because it seems like everything is so sensitive in the prison environment. Disrespect can happen like that.
No doubt.
Is that a fair system to have? In terms of the slightest thing you do is a violation.
Well, it ain't about the system is fair. This is what it's about. It's about knowing the rules, whatever the rules are.
Okay, that's my question.
Yeah.
Are some of these rules just a little too strict?
No doubt. No doubt. Man, it's extra out. You know what I mean? Some of these rules, you'll be like, what? But these are the rules that was in place when you pulled up. Somewhere, somebody made an agreement that this is how we gonna push it. So when you get there, that's what I mean about knowing the rules of the yard, because yards are different. You may get on one yard and these are the rules. You may get on the same other yard at the same level, and those are not the rules. So that's where the politics come in and the politics come in. And whoever set forth on these yards, some of these dumbass rules, but you got to be mindful of what they are, and ignorance is no excuse.
So if the bathroom is over there, but in order for me to go use that bathroom, I got to walk that way and then go that way and then come back around. That's what the rule is, right? If I walk right through this area to go use the bathroom, I violated a rule.
You violated a rule if that's what the rule is.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, when it comes to TVs, when it comes to certain things, so many rules are in place that a guy who comes, most vets gonna come like, what's shaking on this yard? What's cracking? Well, look, homie, this how they running it. You know what I mean? And you'll hear a homie be like, what? What kind of shit is that? You know what I mean? But these are some of the rules that go along. And then you still have homies that be like, I ain't doing that.
Yeah.
I don't do it like that. And then we got to ride with the homie because he felt he didn't have to do it like that when the rules were set at this yard. You know what I mean? And, that's why shit stay cracking.
Yeah, it is bizarre. So let's say a black violates a rule against a Southsider. It's that DP is not as easy to administer. A Southsider just not going to DP a black dude.
No, but let me tell you this though. See, you have different people. You know what I mean? Because like I said, you'll have one homie to come and be like, hey, we need to holler at the master. They homie disrespected me. Blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Well, come on, homie, let's go holler at him. Hey, check this out, man. Your people disrespected the homie. You know, they'll do their little investigation. Then you had the one homie that I'll never forget when we was at Victorville. What was the homie from? I think the homie was from Nine Deuce Bishop. And the Mexican disrespect, he fired on him, dropped him. You know what I mean? So it was an issue. But when we went out on that yard to holler at him, straight up, because I mean, you know, the dudes who represent the car, they know who in their car. They know who's got wild hairs up their ass and who active and who be tripping. You know what I mean? And so the homie said, the dude called me a bitch. I wasn't going to nobody and ask for permission for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And dudes say, they looked at dude and said, man, you called him that? And dude's like, well, yeah. They say, look, man, y'all, hey, man, have a nice day. About less than a week later, they rushed dude. Apparently, he kept on, you know, having the bullshit. So sometimes it ain't like that. You know what I mean? Sometimes ain't nobody waiting. Disrespect ain't. I'm not finna go ask nobody else to do nothing about a dude to disrespect him. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, you know, that's how shit work.
It's bizarre that some of the rules that exist on these prisons. I wonder if the people that institute these rules, are they doing these rules just because they want to make it complicated? I'm gonna make it tough on this yard. I'm gonna make it where, you know, people are gonna have to bow down in certain ways and certain forms in order to, you know, follow my rules or our rules.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. When we opened Victorville 2 in 2005, when you open a prison, it's the worst thing to do. It's no rules set at all. It's going to be 1,500 people on this yard, but right now it's 50. You know what I mean? So everybody cool. You know what I mean? It ain't even no race, nothing. Everybody waving at each other. Everybody. But as more and more people come, more and more attitudes come, more and more gangsters come, you have to add the rules, you know, in there. I was an intricate part of Victorville 2, and anybody that was there know of getting the rules in place before 1,000 people come on this yard. You know what I mean? You know, and we was bumping heads with people just trying to get the rules straight. You know what I mean? And it was a difficult job. I end up in the hole a lot because the administration, the warden, she was a black lady, the lieutenants, everybody knew that I'm pushing the line to make sure that the Bloods, homie, period, you know, had what they had coming. You know what I mean? And pushed the line on, you know, the tables and how we gonna eat. You know, I even bumped heads with some homies, some good homies. You know what I mean? You know, well, why can't all blacks sit together? You know what I mean? And that's cool now until it's 1,000 people at this yard, and then when the Bloods pull up, Parus pull up, they don't got nowhere to sit. Crips pull up, they don't have nowhere to sit. The homies from the Bay pull up, they don't have nowhere to sit. So yes, look like I'm politicking, but I'm really trying to get shit in order so it won't be no confusion later. And people don't realize and understand that. You know, I even had the homies, man, you always, matter of fact, my homie from 20 Outlaws, you always in some shit. You know what I mean? And I'm like, bro, I'm trying to get this shit, homie, to where it runs smooth. That way it ain't no bullshit at the end. That way it's less stabbing. And some people look at it one way and some people look at it, I totally understand what's going on, you know.
So the rules that you're trying to institute have to do with tables, areas,
microwave,
phones,
wash machines, everything. TVs, you know, who gonna have this TV? You know, because at first, when we first opened Victorville, like I say, what TV gonna be the black TV? I mean, we started everything from scratch. Do you understand how much politics this causes? Well, look, homie, we got to talk to the other races. Look, homie, well, we want this TV, but we want that TV. Well, listen, homie, y'all can get this TV. You know what I mean? Well, how y'all gonna tell us what TV we gonna get? I mean, this shit went on with every single thing in the institution, so you can imagine how exhausting it was. But I had the energy at that time. You know, I had the energy to, you know, but by the time the homies came, by the time the big homies like Swanee Fly from Villains and them came, by the time Lil Rob and them from PDL came, by the time some of the G homies hit the yard, by the time Deuce John them from 2Ps and them came, it was smooth sailing. Everything was like in order. They didn't have no worries. Had a TV, had tables to eat, had, you know, shit was in order. But they don't understand that the flack that, you know, me and some of the homies took on trying to just set the shit right for when the prison do get populated. And that's why people hate opening new prisons, because of the politics.
Is there a lot of DPs then in the early stages of setting the rules?
No, because we so short that you don't got time to be, you don't have time. We sticking together like glue. You know what I mean? And then, like I said, it's some homies that, only a few homies, you know, I pretty much wanted to have a yard to where, you know, Bloods and Parus is one. Ain't no us and them. Ain't no, you know, them the Bloods over there, them the Paru. I wanted to keep it, you know what I mean? And people was coming from yards where maybe the homies was so deep that The Bloods was over here, the Pyrus was over. No, we couldn't afford that, homie. It got to the point to where just in blacks, they was bringing so many Hispanic Pisces in and the Southsiders and all this in. It was a point to it was probably 1,000 others and 150 blacks. You know what I mean? We don't have no time for no kind of and I mean when I say blacks, I mean Crips, Bloods, Bay. You know what I mean? Pyrus. So at this time, it's so much unity. That no, it wasn't nobody getting out of line because it was just nothing but love and respect for each other. So didn't have a problem. We had a problem with other races, but at the same time, a lot of times the homies wasn't wrong. They just stood on what they were supposed to stand on.
Okay, and you've been to prisons where the rules were already set and everything, I guess, went smooth when you got there.
Yeah, but like you say, man, it all depends on what the situation was, because when we opened up Jamestown 1 yard in '93, at Jamestown they had all Crips on the 1, they had all Pyrus and Bloods on the 2. That's just how Jamestown was ran. If you a Blood, you go to the 2. You a Crip, you go to the 1. I happen to be in an integration where they say, you know what, we finna start putting Bloods on the 2 yard. I mean on the 1 yard. You know what I mean? There was 500 Crips over there. So I was the 25th homie that came. I was the 25th Blood to come when I got there.
So you're going there under Crip rules on that yard then, right?
Pretty much, but we implemented, we are who we are. We ain't gonna tuck our tail for nobody. Mm-hmm. It's some homies that said I don't want to go, I'm not going over. They rather go to the hole than to go over there. I got there, man, I'm 20 years old. I hit it, you know what I mean? They say my big homie Elliot Ness from Ludus Park was over there pushing the line, but it was hectic. Because in Jamestown, it's a big-ass tract. The Crips and the Serenos live down there. The Bloods and the Norteños live down here. So the homies used to be like, listen, man, if y'all go walk around that track, y'all go 2 or 3, 4 deep. Because that's just a situation. It's like you walking through 30 Harlem 30s or something from you know what I mean, the neighborhood 20s or something. You know what I mean? It was real hectic. So the rules was in place. It was so many Crips that it was hectic on us. So they brought both bus loads in. The next thing you know, we was so deep. Guess what happened? San Diego homies broke off. Bloods broke off. Pyrus over here. Because there's so many of us now, you know what I mean? So those are the politics that play a part. But at first, when we first got there, I'm talking about it was solid, and I kind of liked it like that when it was, the unity amongst all Damus was, and it was still unity. It just, the politics changed.
And you didn't mind being a part of the politics. You jumped right into the politics, huh?
You know what? I was young, man. I was 19, 20 years old, and man, and I was with it, and I was young, and actually after we got so deep, Elliot Ness was on some look, man. We on some peacetime with the Crips, you know what I mean, and me and the young homies, me, Boo from Fruit Town, Tiny them from Crenshaw Mafia. We was like, we trying to get down with some of these dudes. You know what I mean? We trying to run a few fades up in this barbershop, and that's what it was, So
now, on Crip Mac's DP, that dude decided to publicly speak about it. He went on camera, he spoke about it, and he revealed all his injuries. He didn't keep it private. He didn't keep it hood. He didn't keep hood business. Why do you think someone would do that? Not particularly him, but why would anyone just want to?
Well, I don't think he posted the video. And once the video was out there, I mean, it was a thing to do. Let me not run from it. Let me face it head on. Yeah, that was a situation. Yeah, that happened. And people tuned in to watch.
Now, his violation was dissing hoods when he was 12 years old, which was about 10 years ago. What do you think about that being a violation? Like you said some negative things about what you are now. You posted some things about different hoods back in 2012. Is that DPable?
Yeah, it's DPable for a couple reasons. For one, it's still disrespect no matter what. You said these things out your mouth one point in time. Now you may be one of us. Now you're in the spotlight. Mm-hmm. Now you're on a public platform. I'm almost guaranteed that if he wasn't C-Mac, on YouTube, from YouTube, you know what I mean? On these different shows, they probably would have just checked him verbally. Check this out, homie. You know, if they would have found out, they probably already knew about it. You know, but since he, like you say, he C-Mac, Crip Mac, they felt they had to save face, and some of the shit is about saving face for some of these. Some of these dudes don't even want to do it. It's just the best thing to do for the company, which the company be in the hood, you know.
No doubt. And he pulled up, no hesitation. He understood, yeah, maybe I was a little disrespectful when I was 12 and I put these things on the internet that I shouldn't have did. And he seemed to embrace getting his ass whooped.
Well, but yeah, there's still, at the end of the day, I still don't feel that was a DP. I still feel it was excessive by that number of people, you know. But for the injuries that he came out with, you know, it wasn't as bad as it could have been, you know, or I've seen even with just 2 people, you know. So, you know, it was what it was. He pulled up though. Now, what if a person knows that, man, these people that are going to do this DP, that they go hard, they go excessive. I ain't trying to end up in no hospital. Mm-hmm. I don't want to run from a DP. I'm down for a DP, right. But these motherfuckers, they going to put me in the hospital. Right.
Because they did that to the last homie.
Yeah.
How would you feel about that person?
I've been there. You know what I mean? Like I say, you know, we don't talk about everything, you know, but we on the subject, you know what I mean? And I've had a homie ask me, you know, don't put such and such in there. You know what I mean? You know, don't, you know what I mean? And you do have to take into consideration, you know, maybe say maybe they was arguing over a girl before or some little animosity between them. They cool, but maybe it's some money. Somebody owes somebody some money. Or maybe this dude just hands are so vicious. You know what I mean? You know, put somebody else in. You know, and as the administrator, the guy who's ever a minister need to take some of these things into consideration, like for real.
Yeah.
You know,
because a homie should not. No, do you agree with this? A homie should not end up in the hospital after a DP.
He shouldn't, but at the same time, sometimes they do. Because these dudes is hitting hard, man, and these dudes is really squabbing, and these dudes is really, you know, fighting, you know, fighting. So, shit, anything can happen.
Okay. All right. This is a fascinating topic that I could actually talk about this for the rest of the episode, but let's move on to this other topic, F. And we got this dude, former heavyweight UFC champion of the world, 2-time heavyweight champion, named Cain Velasquez, who is now under indictment in the county of Santa Clara, in the city of San Jose, for busting on somebody who was a child molester. Well, I gotta say an alleged child molester, because homeboy hasn't went on trial.
Right.
He's out on bail. The alleged child molester is a guy named Harry Golarte, 43 years old, and Cain Velasquez was just, you know, he saw him and he pressed the line on the dude and shot at him multiple times, and now he's facing like multiple charges. What's your whole take on that situation?
Man, my whole take is, I sit here and I say I'm a peaceful man as far as, you know, I'm not for the violence. You know, I'm for the culture. You know what I mean? I try to, you know, I want to see the violence, you know, at a minimum. You know, that's my main thing that I want to see. I want to be able to be out here, you know, okay, you repping your set and you doing what you're doing without the violence. This is a total opposite of my stance on this one. You know what I mean? I felt him 100% because, man, when it come to them kids, man, you know, it's a kid. You know, you a grown-ass man forcing yourself upon in whatever fashion he did allegedly. You know what I mean? I wasn't feeling that. So when he seen him, you know, and didn't hesitate to get cracking, I wasn't mad at him, put it like that, you know.
Now, how do you feel that this guy, he's charged, he's out on bail, but the case hasn't been proven yet? I mean, there's a chance that he's innocent and they got the wrong guy. There's a chance that it's a whole big misunderstanding. I remember here in the 80s, there was a preschool that went on trial here in LA called the McMartin preschool case. They were accused of molesting multiple kids. You know, I just saw a documentary on it recently. Nobody got molested. It was a whole lie. But the whole school went on trial during, I think it was like 82 or 83. So sometimes there are false allegations. And the DA, I was reading an article where the DA said that Cain Velasquez decided to become a vigilante.
Yeah, I did.
And take the law into his own hand. Do you ever have any hesitation on that type of thing when we don't really know if this dude did what they're saying he did?
No, you do, but at the end of the day, I feel, and it's just my opinion only, that Velasquez had insight on who this guy is, and whatever he did for a person that not, Velasquez, from what I know, I don't know him to be a street dude. I mean, he could have came from the hood or something like that, but he's a UFC fighter, 2-time champ. So the guy understands, right and wrong. So for him to just pop like that and take it that far. Now, the whole thing about it is, by you being a 2-time champion UFC fighter, you got some hands. You can kick some ass. You know what I mean? So you could have caught up this dude and just kicked his ass, and beat him down. But you decided to get a gun. That leads me to believe he know what the hell he was doing, because he put it on the line. You know what I mean? He put it on the line, and I think he knew who he was trying to get.
Yeah.
But I do understand what you're saying about people having, misinformation, or maybe this not really the guy, or maybe it was his cousin, not his brother, or, not him. But I think he knew exactly who he was trying to gun down, man.
Now, in this one article that I read, it says that this guy, that's the Harry Golarte, they're charging him with lewd and lascivious acts against a 4-year-old. Now that's what it says in the article, against a 4-year-old. But I'm not sure if that's supposed to be 14, because I know the state law says
usually they don't.
It's 14 and under.
Right,
it says lewd and lascivious act with a 14 or under. But in the article it says a lewd act against a 4-year-old child. I guess it really doesn't matter, right? If it's 4 or 14.
No, it doesn't. But it could be a typo, because they usually, like you say 14 and under. They usually don't specifically say the name of a child. But man, it's bad all the way around. But it's 10 times worse at 4.
Now let's explain what the prosecutors are alleging that Cain Velasquez did. They're saying that he saw him in his car. He followed his car, started a high-speed chase with the dude in the car, and then at some point rammed the car and then pulled out the gun. And I think he fired 6 shots, missing him completely, but hitting a 63-year-old person that was in the car with Harry Golarte. I guess someone that goes that far, like you said, they must have some inside information where they feel confident to press a line like this.
Right, but just let's look on their side too. The people that was in the car with him, though, those could have been some carpool buddies riding home from work. Could have been some church people that he was, they was going to, to get some supplies for the church. That's the problem that I have with that issue, just based on you shooting in a car with occupied vehicle, and you don't know who else is in the car with him. So that could may be the difference in him getting a smaller amount of time opposed to a larger amount of time, just based on you shooting at people other than the person that you're trying. Not that it's right to do either or, but it could be even worse that you shooting at victims that has nothing to do with what you're saying you was doing this for.
Now they say he's looking at 20 years in prison. I don't believe even if he's found guilty of something, there's no way he's getting 20 years.
Well, we'll just go back to last week when we was talking about the 3 guys that robbed the 500,000 watch in Beverly Hills, and we was talking about how they got the 12 years. Look at the charges that this guy has. He has 10 counts. He has 3 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. He have 3 counts of assault with a firearm. What's the difference? You know what I mean? So you giving him 6 counts of the same charge, basically.
They do that.
You know what I mean? Then you charging him with 4 other counts. I mean, and that's how they rack up all that time.
Yeah, I think the prosecutor's just overcharging right now.
No, they definitely overcharging.
Just to make him shake in his boots?
No doubt. But we were just talking about how state can sometimes wrap up that charge to make it even worse than what the federal side to do.
Yeah, because what this guy did is, I don't feel as worse as what the 2 dudes did that stole a $500,000 watch and that shot a lady. I think that no, because the target was a child molester.
But he didn't hit the child molester.
He hit
an innocent person.
So
I ain't so innocent, but he hit a person that he wasn't targeted.
I give him an A for effort, though. I mean, that he pressed a very hard line. He just missed the target.
Yeah, he did, but I'm saying that's, hey man, just now. What if you in a car with somebody you don't know that's a child molester? We don't know everything that our friends do.
Yeah,
we could easily jump in a car with somebody, go to the store real fast, and somebody get to shooting at him. Now I'm shot. As from your perspective, you feel, hold up, I'm an innocent bystander. And that's how the prosecution is going to play it. You shot an innocent man, based on, and you shot a man who wasn't even. Now, Golarte, I'll guarantee you, his attorney probably tried to push that case back all the way to this Velasquez gets sentenced. So you can never say if you shot a convicted. You know what I mean? They gonna play some games in that courtroom.
Yeah, because now both of these guys got cases.
No doubt.
The molester dude, Harry Golarte, he's out on bail, and his case is brand new too. He bailed out in February.
Okay.
And now Cain Velasquez, his case is March. So yeah, they're both be going to court. What if they see each other in the courthouse? What's the chances if they both got to go to court on the same day?
Hey, it could be possible, but I guarantee you they may act civil just based on they already up against some serious charges. But it's funny how it ain't funny, but it's sad. I'm gonna say sad that we talk about the victim of a shooting. And we talk about, the guy who molested the kid, but we never take into consideration. I ain't gonna say we don't take into consideration, but sometimes while talking about stories, we don't take into consideration, man, how is this kid doing? The mental state that what this kid, the trauma, that this kid had to go through, and being molested, man, that has to be horrible. And like you say, I understand the A for effort 100%, and but at the same time, man, I hate to hear about kids getting, I hate it, man.
And this is a kid that he's related to, so it even hits harder, right?
A lot of times it is, Alex. Them the people that's closest to you. From what I'm hearing about molestation, it's the people that's closest to you.
No, I'm saying that Cain Velasquez, the kid is related to Cain. This is
okay.
This
I
kid
thought you were talking about Golarte.
No, this kid is in Cain's family, Cain Velasquez family. So I guess he felt violated.
Yeah,
like
hell
this
yeah,
is
he did.
either his
Whoever
niece,
it is,
nephew,
yeah,
probably a niece or nephew, because they would have said if it was a son or daughter,
right, no doubt,
or a younger cousin.
Yeah.
But let me read this. The DA has filed multiple charges against Velasquez, including, as you mentioned, attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, assault with a firearm, shooting at a motor vehicle, willfully discharging a firearm from a vehicle. And then when they asked the DA, like, why are you charging him so much? And the DA, Jeff Rosa, said, the sad tragedy is that Mr. Velasquez chose to take the law into his own hands. That's typical, right? This is a prosecution talk, police talk. Mm-hmm. Endangering the public and everyone in the truck. District Attorney Jeff Rosen said in a press release announcing the charges, the act of violence also causes more pain and suffering to his family. There's some partial truth to what the prosecutor's saying. What do you think?
He's saying DA talk. He's saying what he need to say to make his charges, be heard and, not sound over the top, but at the end of the day, man, I think everybody understood this man's mission, and I'm not mad at him for going on.
Now, let me ask you, if this guy is convicted, Mr. Harry Golarte, let's say he's convicted and he ends up on a prison yard where you're at. Mm-hmm. And everyone already knows what he's there for because he had a high profile case.
Right.
What happens to him now?
That's a Hispanic name, right?
I thought it was Hispanic.
Yeah, it could be something.
But his first name is Harry.
Yeah.
Usually Hispanics don't name their kids Harry.
Right.
So and he doesn't look Hispanic. It could be Italian.
Right.
We're gonna call him a white guy. Let's call him a white guy because I don't know 100%, but he looks white. And Golarte could be a European, a white European last name. It could be a non-Latino name.
Exactly.
So, but for you, his race matters on the prison yard.
No, it don't even matter on who gonna handle it.
Okay. Okay. So
that's all that matters.
So because he's not black, that's not y'all issue.
Exactly.
Okay.
But on high-profile cases like this, they gonna know him as soon as he get there. Hey, man, that's a dude from, and he may just be while he's actually walking up with his bedroll, they. Hey man, go.
But what's the chances of someone like this ending up on a USP or an FCI?
He would have to have a hell of a background. He would have to have past prior violence, which is possible. Which is possible. He could have been in prison before. He could have prior violence. He can have prior prison convictions. And that would put him up there. But he definitely wouldn't. What they'd do with this guy, just say if he had USP or FCI points. A lot of these dudes, they ship him around till they find somewhere where they put him out on that yard and he can stay? Okay, we gonna leave him out there. They might send him to Pennsylvania where nobody paying attention at the moment because it's a California case. Is it? Oh, San Jose.
Yeah.
So somewhere somebody not paying attention and he slipped through. I know some rats that then went to some USPs and they shipped them to the East Coast and they didn't get found out. You know what I mean? Because maybe they ran their politics a little different. Maybe they didn't care. This dude from California, we don't care about the California dude. The 9 California dudes that's on this yard, that's up to them. And there has been some dudes who slipped through the cracks. Yeah.
Now, but the federal prison does have an obligation to try to put you on a yard where you're not going to get killed, right?
No doubt. They be watching, believe me. You know what I mean? Because like I said, I had one situation where I was checking the dude paperwork, and the lieutenant started fire. I kept checking his paperwork. So when I walked off and went on about my business, I seen the lieutenants hemmed him up. They said, "Listen, man, we seen you talking to Thornton, man. We gonna take you off this yard." He like, "Nah, hold on. I'm not hot. I'm not a rat. Let me prove if you take me off the yard and make me look like a rat, I'm really not. Let me prove. Let me. I got this." They like, "You sure?" And they let him. He stayed, and he wasn't a rat. You know what I mean? And it was false allegations on him. But no, they pay attention. They try their best because they are liable at some point. But it's a lot of homies or people that's in prison on higher levels that this case may not be, because it's hard to check a person's whole background. This case may be a bank robbery, but you did have a sexual assault somewhere in your background, and they'll never know about that. You know what I mean? So don't get me wrong. It's still some chomos that's walking some of these yards. It's just they haven't been found out based that they. This case is high profile. Yeah. They gonna find out about this.
This is open and shut.
And it don't matter what yard he go to. He's gonna be condemned even if he go to the lowest level. He's gonna be condemned.
Now, at the Fed level, like if this is a state case, so if he is found guilty, if Harry Golarte is found guilty, he'll probably go on an SNY yard.
Right, they have yards for him now.
Do the feds have similar SNY yards?
I'm almost certain that they do. The feds got everything. You know what I mean? So, like I said, I only know the places that I've been, but I'm almost certain that they got a yard for everybody.
Yeah.
They got a yard with no rocking and rolling. It's a mutual agreement that if you own this yard, something ain't almost right about you, but we not gonna ask you about it. You know what I mean? I'm almost certain they had those kind of yards.
Okay, so what do you hope to happen for Cain Velasquez? Because this trial or his case is really a statement about how we view child molesters in society or even in prison. Mm-hmm. Most people view them as the lowest of the earth, the bottom feeders, the scum of the earth. And if most people believe that, then that means police officers know this, judges know this, prosecutors know this too. But then at the same time, they're going to say, hey, there's laws.
Right.
There's laws.
Yeah, no doubt.
But when do we say, hey, Cain Velasquez has lived a righteous life for all these years. He's a successful fighter. He's a family man. All of that should be taken into consideration too, right?
Well, no doubt. I believe that, they can also argue that, just the raw emotion of him seeing the guy, because the thing about it is, from what I read, he didn't wait to the guy to come out the house, and he didn't, have a premeditated, way of trying to get at this guy. From what what I'm reading is he kind of just seen the guy. You know what I mean? And it's raw emotions could have just took over. So those should be taken into consideration. That you know what I mean, the overwhelming, feeling that at this moment. This wasn't planned. This wasn't plotted. This was something that happened right now, and I snapped. You know what I mean? And those could be taken into consideration. I hope the guy who got shot that wasn't involved, be okay. I don't know where he was shot at in the body. Hopefully that wound is not too bad. But how I feel. I hope Velasquez get his less time, and I hope the other guy Golarte get as much time as they can, give him.
Now, this high-speed chase lasted 11 miles.
They gonna want to answer for that.
Yeah,
they gonna want to answer for all that.
I think that alpha men, and I'm assuming he is one because he was a UFC fighter. Mm-hmm. I think that it's in our genetics, in our DNA, to protect our families, to protect the ones we love. And I think this goes back to prehistoric times, that we were always designed as men, as strong men to our families, to protect. And sometimes protection meant killing, because if you didn't kill, then somebody else would be hurt by this person's actions.
Right.
But now we live in this law and order society
no
that
doubt.
confines us as men of protecting to the fullest extent that men protected historically.
Right.
When you go back hundreds of years, 300 years ago, nobody would have blink an eye.
No doubt.
This man did what he's supposed to do. But now that we live under the certain laws and certain systems, this guy can end up going to prison for 20 years.
No doubt. Especially when you take into consideration if somebody break in your house and you come out your room with a gun and they turn around and run and you shoot them in the back in your home, they still want to answer for it. You could understand how these laws, like you say, handcuff the DA, handcuff the jury, on making a decision. The decision is not going to be based on whether we feel is right or wrong. It's going to be based on what laws we have into a place, and that's what they're going to go by, unfortunately.
But a jury could completely ignore.
Oh, no doubt.
They can ignore everything
that
the court is saying. Jury nullification. They can do that if they want to. And I think a case like this is going to be hard to find a jury that would go against Cain Velasquez,
it's possible, definitely,
because they're going to know everything about the case.
Yeah, they're going to,
because it's on the internet.
Exactly.
Of course, the judges now. This wasn't happening in your time when you was catching cases because the internet didn't exist. But now judges immediately say, "Do not go on the internet." They tell juries, "Do not."
Is that right?
Yeah. I am ordering you not to look on the internet, to not read anything on the internet. Don't go on Twitter. They actually say don't go on Twitter, don't go on Instagram, don't go on Facebook, because they know that those things influence a jury. So last thoughts on this case before we wrap it up, F?
I believe Velasquez should be, get a reduced sentence, based on the emotional state of a family member getting molested. And I believe Golarte should be handed down to fudge punishment, man. That just ain't right.
Well, I'm going to say I think Cain Velasquez should be, I think all charges should be dropped. No one was seriously injured. The person that did get hit has a non-fatal, a non-life-threatening injury. I think that his lawyer will argue that this case should not be charged in the first place. And I want the accused molester to have his day in court, because I don't know how guilty he really is. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt until he's convicted, because that's how you guys do in prison. You don't check people unless they come in there with that conviction.
No doubt. You're right.
That person's walking in there with that conviction. But I think Cain Velasquez should be either, if they don't drop the charges, I think he should get acquitted of all charges. I predict if he goes on trial, I predict he's getting acquitted of every charge.
That's noted.
And on that note, let's wrap this episode up. This has been a great conversation. Episode 4, Streets and Scholars, and you could find F. Actually, not only can they find you on your Instagram at FGeneral1, but they can find you on YouTube. What's your YouTube channel?
FG Unleashed. Come check out the YouTube channel, FG Unleashed, and I'm right there. Come check me out.
And you've put up quite a lot of videos in the last month and a half, and your video's been going up, actually.
You know what? I'm trying, like you say, man, I learned from one of the best, of course. You know what I mean? You, Alex Alonso, you taught me a lot, but at the same time, I'm just trying to bring the real back to, my channel. Trying to bring the real and just trying to speak on real factual situations and opinions. And, I'm not trying to, do no song and dance or nothing, just raw material.
Okay. And you can find me on Alex Alonso 101 on all social media platforms. And also, I would invite people to check out my videos on Street TV on the YouTube platform. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and a review. Give us a 5-star rating if you think we deserve so. Leave a review, leave a question, and I will try to address those questions in the next episode. And we're actually going to do an episode where it's just all questions. So when we get enough questions, we'll do that. And that wraps up Streets and Scholars, and I'm out.
I'm out.